Greetings, fellow songwriters and seekers, and welcome back to Muse and Measure. If you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button down below. All right, so today I want to talk about honing the craft of vulnerability, because this process of songwriting, of writing in general, is not just about spilling your guts and just being completely honest and open. That's a big part of it. That's the first step. But you've got to hone that into something where you're expressing a truth that is a common truth to other people. And you're going to, sometimes when we are expressing ourselves in a vulnerable state, our language is not so, direct. It doesn't quite connect with our audience the way it should. It doesn't give them that experience in the senses, because we're processing it through our mind. We're using our conceptual mind to make sense of things as we're feeling it. We're not just having this objective reality where you're just getting the facts, all the sensory details. And that's what really communicates to listeners what our internal state is. A lot of times when we're extremely vulnerable, we are doing a lot of telling and not showing. And so that's why, a diary entry or somebody just spilling their guts and saying everything that's going on with them, where that is very, very important as a first stage, it needs to be honed and crafted into something that is something artful. So how do we do that is the question. How do we take something that is super raw and vulnerable and turn it into something that can actually be a means of communicating to other people? And I really feel like by doing this process, you're not only learning how to communicate well, but you're also like healing yourself of all this stuff that you were going through. And it's a way of processing it and turning it into something a little bit more objective to give you a bigger perspective on it so that you don't quite have to suffer so much for it. And that's also the gift that you give through the song, is that, the song doesn't go on for all day. I don't know what kind of songs you're writing, but the average song goes for like 3 minutes and 30 seconds or, up to 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And if you're really indulgent, maybe you're doing 15 minutes. Maybe you think that I'm very indulgent from the length of some of my videos, which maybe I am. But my songs tend to be pretty short, and I really like short songs. So the fact that they are short means that, okay, we go through this experience. It may be difficult emotionally. We may feel all kinds of things, but it's over, and we have a greater perspective. And it's over pretty quick, too. So we can go through a whole lifetime of experience in just 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which is the miracle of songwriting. And we can process these emotions and heal a little bit from it. Maybe we have to revisit it again and again and again, but that's what's really cool about it, is it unfolds over time, and if it's written really well, the listener can have a total experience within those 3 minutes and 33 seconds and get over it, basically. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is honing the craft and some of the steps in the process, just so you can turn this into something that is more like a workshop for this raw, vulnerable state. As I said in previous videos, this is such a gift when it happens. You might be totally distraught and upset and pissed off and just besides yourself, gushing with emotions. If you can have the, foresight, what the correct word is for this, but if you can have the wisdom there that okay, I'm going through some serious shit right now, but this can be used, and not only is it going to do me good, if I write a great song from it, it's going to help other people. So it's really the kind of this bodhisattva point of view that what you're about to do is to help other people. You're going to help yourself first, and by that process, you're going to heal the whole world, ideally. So, all right. So, vulnerability starts with presence, not performance. So, when you are doing the initial stages of it and you're writing from this vulnerable state, you do not want to be thinking about I'm a singer on a stage performing this song. You just want to get out what you are feeling and get as much out as possible. And that already in itself is pretty therapeutic. So you want to free write. But, it's really important to focus on bodily sensation. So instead of saying how heartbroken or heartbroken or sad you are, You start with the actual feeling and describing the physical feeling of what it feels like inside your body, and notice what you notice. So you don't have to say, well, I'm going to just focus on my gut region for this whole thing. Whatever sensations come up, you will become aware of them because they will make themselves known to you. Your mind is always mapping out the body and figuring out what's going on, and locating certain sensations in it. Right now I've got a rotator cuff inflammation, sign of my getting long in the tooth, possibly. I would like to say I got it from some kind of amazing sports injury, but no, I just slept on a bed wrong somewhere in the middle of Wisconsin. And it's been bothering me for the last couple of months. So if I was doing a free write from bodily sensation right now, that would definitely be what I'd be writing about. But when you're feeling intense emotions, oftentimes we just get caught in our head and we're not thinking of the body, but the body is definitely feeling the emotional states, and you can tap into that. And that's a great way to communicate something that, like, is kind of ineffable, like describing emotions, like I feel sad. Well, what the hell does that mean? If some robot or alien species were to arrive on the planet and ask what it feels to be sad, we'd be kind of hard pressed to really communicate that in a way. But by giving the physical sensations, I don't know, there's some kind of, like psychosomatic response to hearing words. I remember when I used to hear people even talking about magic mushrooms, I would get that tense feeling in my gut of the sensation of what that psychedelic does to you, that kind of tightening of the gut and that kind of unease. I would just get that sensation just by the mere suggestion and people talking about it. So it's kind of like that. You have this kind of like the words induce certain symptoms. So by hearing about somebody's physical sensations in regard to sadness, it's pretty powerful, actually. It's good writing. So you can say like your chest feels heavy, or what does the room smell like? So any type of sensory data is really useful in this. Okay? Another good writing exercise is called the 3-minute memory drill. So in this, you close your eyes, you recall some kind of vivid emotional moment, but you describe it only using the 5 senses. So you can only describe it in terms of your touch, your taste, your smell, your hearing, and your sight, only in real kind of objective sensory details. So that's a really great exercise to do when you're trying to hone these vulnerable moments into something that's actually communicable. Another possible kind of writing prompt, although it's not really writing, it's dictation, is you get out your phone and or your watch or whatever recording device you have, and pretend like you're talking to a friend and explaining what's going on with them. And they're just being very good listeners because they're not interjecting and interrupting. So do that for a couple minutes and then transcribe it out and see what comes of it. You might get some great lines there, or some kind of sense of what the voice is in this. And the last little writing prompt that I'll give you that is really useful is called the why ladder. So you just keep asking yourself, why? I'm feeling sad about this, why? Why? Like a little kid, they like to play the why game. So do that for yourself, and you're eventually going to hit on some kind of truth. Ask 5 times and see what comes up. Keep asking why. It's a great line in itself, why. So this stage where we're just like getting the emotions out, trying to kind of funnel them through sensory detail, is really just being kind to yourself and letting yourself vent, and not being, telling yourself, oh, just calm down and get over it. You're actually letting yourself feel what you feel. And that is just incredibly healing in itself and transformative in itself, allowing yourself to do that. Maybe you've never actually done that. I know it's been a struggle in my life to actually let myself feel the emotions I'm feeling, to lose it, to fall apart. Let it happen. But take advantage of it when it happens. If you're in the mood. Obviously, sometimes we're so distraught that that's not going to work. But if you are in a place where you can go, okay, what's going on with me right now really sucks and it's really shitty. Let's see what I can do with it, and let's turn this shit to gold. That's the great alchemy of songwriting. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about structure. I know I hit on this on the last video, but we can really use the structure of a song to build and communicate our emotions so that the song actually speaks the truth of the emotional state, and the music speaks it. Not only just the lyrics, but the music itself. And what's really cool about popular song structure is that it's all there. In the verses, it's more restraint. You're just giving the factual details, you're giving the context, you're telling the story about what happened, almost like if the police were investigating you, they just want the facts. So it's a little bit more restraint. You're not going to be flipping out and letting all these emotions pour out quite so quickly. So use your verse sections for that, just getting the factual details out. But as the pre-chorus comes up, and this is kind of what, good interrogators do to suspects, is they really kind of push them on things so that the cracks start to show. So the pre-chorus is the ramping up of emotion. So usually verses are pretty flat emotionally. They're just giving you the story, even though there might be incredible melancholy in it and just kind of a sense of sadness overarching, or a sense of joy. But it's a subtle emotion that you're feeling in the verse section. That pre-chorus is going to ramp up that. The cracks start to show. You get the mounting emotion coming through the pre-chorus. Great example of this is Joni Mitchell's All I Want, which is one of my favorite songs. And you just hear, just as she begins, I'm on a lonely road and I am traveling. Just telling the story, but then as her wishes and aspirations, even the positive ones, talking about how she wants to bring out the best of each other, that starts to make her become emotional, and you start to hear it in her voice, and you hear it in the music, and the lyrics also reveal that. So listen to what the best songs do with this, and really test this theory. Is the verse section pretty kind of flat and just telling the details in the story, giving you the background information? Or is it supercharged with emotion? Am I full of shit with this? Or is this really true? So is that pre-chorus also mounting the energy and the emotions? That's what it's supposed to do in theory. There's always exceptions to this, but I think that's what's really cool about the song structure, and you think about it that way. That's what people come to expect too with the pre-chorus, is that, okay, this is where things are going to get more and more intense. It's not the climax of intensity yet, but it's building towards that. And that's actually even more intense than maybe the climax, because as we know, the worrying about something, when things start to get really kind of awkward, that's when we feel it the most. It's kind of a relief when there's finally an explosion and the emotion comes out pouring at some point. Because, oh God, well, thank God that's over at least. But it's when things start to get intense. You can think about it like a horror film, when that music starts to go, you haven't seen the killer yet, you don't know where they're lurking, but you hear it in the music, and that's when you probably suffer the most, is in that moment of anticipation and worry. So think of your pre-choruses in that way, and I think you're going to start writing much more effective pre-choruses, that they're that much more intense, that they're building and mounting that energy. The chorus is the climax, the release, especially later choruses, song structure, being built like a roller coaster, flat verses, ramp up, then you hit here, then you keep going up and up and up. So chorusing can get much more and more intense, but the function of the chorus is an emotional release. It's the truth that couldn't stay hidden. You just couldn't keep it inside anymore. This is really what's happening. I'm going to miss me when I'm gone. When I'm dead and gone, I don't care if anybody remembers me or anybody cares about me anymore. I care about me, and that's the truth that I had to reveal in this song. Or in my song, Born to Cry. A little new baby, you scream and I sigh, you're just like me, born to cry. So just okay, that's the final truth. Everywhere I see, everybody's in total misery and suffering. We're all born to suffer like this. So the chorus or the hook, if you're writing a country song, a verse refrain type kind of thing, the hook is the emotional truth. And that's what people are looking for. And that's not only is it memorable because of the repetition that it keeps coming back again and again throughout a song, but it's the most memorable because it is the most emotionally impactful part of the song. Now, there's plenty of songs that don't do that, like Who Let the Dogs Out? Like, is that some kind of emotional truth that someone had to speak? Maybe. I don't know. Some songs are just in that silly vein. And if you're a huge fan of that song, I apologize. Maybe I just don't quite get it yet. But I think you know what I mean. Like when Adele sings, "Never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you, too. Don't forget me, I beg. I remember you say. Sometimes it lasts in love, and sometimes it hurts instead." So that emotional truth is like, it hurts like hell right now, is what can't be kept in. If you look at her verses from that song, it's, just like telling the story. I heard that you settled down, that you found a girl, that you're married now. I heard your dreams came true. Guess she gave you things I couldn't give to you. But then the pre-chorus is like, I hate to turn up out of the blue uninvited. I couldn't stay away. I couldn't fight it. I'd hope you see my face and that you'd be reminded that for me, it isn't over. Never mind. Then you have the emotional release. Okay? This is really good songwriting. And you won't just see it in the lyrics. You're also going to feel it in the music. Almost like if you didn't even speak the language, you didn't understand what they were saying, you could still feel it, that the intensity is rising. So that's a good check for your music, is just like pretend that you don't understand the words and pretend that you don't understand what the intention was, and just listen back to your music. Is like, is the pre-chorus section building that intensity? Are your verses like this, kind of setting the stage, building the world, giving the context, the setting, giving the background information that's necessary to understand the point of the song? And then the verses, are they starting to become much more intense, building towards a climax? And then is your chorus this big release? Now, it's fun to play with these conventions and do the opposite, but we can use this song structure to really focus our energy and make sure our songs are being very effective. The next question is, where in a song does the healing come in? Not just the end, and I was talking about earlier that like by just the fact that a song is short, that, you get to go through the whole process and somehow be healed at the end. The real section of a song that is healing is the bridge. It gives like a totally different perspective. And when I teach this in my classes, I talk about literal bridges. Like, what's the point of them? Well, it's to connect two sections together, right? It's to give some kind of variety in a song. Otherwise, it would just become too repetitive and boring. But that newness also is a newness in perspective. So the lyrics also should have a broader, alternate view on things that is wiser. Kind of like the Greek chorus does. This is not the chorus section, it's the bridge, but the Greek chorus moralizes it, contextualizes it, has an objective view on it, and they can speak about it. With Adele's Someone Like You, nothing compares, no worries or cares, regrets or mistakes, their memories made. So this is just, she has this perspective that this is just how love is, I would rather have, loved and lost than to have never loved at all. It's kind of that sentiment. But she ends with how bittersweet this would taste. So life is bittersweet. Love is bittersweet. That's the nature of it. That's why the rose is a symbol of love. Beautiful, sweet smelling, but with thorns that hurt. So these cliches are abundant and ubiquitous because they point to some kind of truth as well. So the bridge should give us this kind of release and this healing. And that's why you should always try to throw a bridge into your song somewhere. Sometimes they're not necessary and they just seem superfluous. But when you're talking about going through some kind of emotional journey, it's great to have that wise person come in and interject. And you see this in movies all the time, especially when it's like some young person who just feels like the whole world is completely collapsed. Some old cowboy will come in and give them some kind of new perspective, or some old person, a grandparent or something, will just go, yeah, when I was your age, blah, blah, blah. They give that wisdom, which somehow heals or helps the healing, because it gives them a perspective that they can go, okay, yeah, my troubles and worries and my suffering is so intense, but in the grand scheme of things, to quote Humphrey Bogart, don't add up to a hill of beans. I I gotta watch Casablanca again. It's not quite on the tip of my tongue. But you know what I mean. So, throw a bridge in there. All right, well, let's recontextualize our other rules here, like avoiding cliches. So you don't want to sound generic when you are being vulnerable. You want it to be something very, very personal. And so you can use kind of personal metaphors as opposed to generic metaphors, cliches that have been heard all over and over again. And I talked about this the other day, was Joni Mitchell's, she said, in the song River, I wish I had a river I could skate away on, which is a great flip of a cliche. I wish I had a boat I could sail away on, or I wish I could just sail away or run away. But she makes it very, very specific to her own life and where she's living, that, ice skating on a river is her means of healing and escaping whatever suffering she's going through. That's great. So it contextualizes it to her own personal story, and it's like a truth from her own life, which makes it special, but it's still completely vivid, so it works. People can picture people ice skating and somebody ice skating down a river to escape this place. That's not usually what people think of when they're thinking about escaping, is running away on ice skates. That's pretty cool. Another thing you can do with cliches to avoid them is to contradict yourself in a song. So instead of just like being one pointed and one single focused and saying this is how it is, you can bring in the bittersweetness of love or whatever you're going through, and the fact that laughter or humor is always there, like a line like I laughed in the dark, or I was grateful and angry, things like that, where you have these opposing contraries, because most of the time our emotions are mixed. We have one emotion and some kind of contrary emotion happening. Now, one might be totally recessive and hardly there, but we often, you see people crying, they often are very close to laughter too. So throw that in there because it's true to the human experience. So these contradictions are very, very good for battling, getting too many cliches into your words. And lastly, what I suggest is to read your lyrics aloud. Do they actually sound like you, like something you would say? Or do they sound like some kind of Hallmark card, or that you're copying one of these dead authors behind me, that you're trying to kind of mimic or imitate somebody who was great? Make them sound like you, because as Allen Ginsberg said, people are interested in what you actually think and the particularities of you. And that's what makes you special. Why else would I listen to your music if you're just going to do what everybody else has done before? Also, same goes for your lyrics. I mean, there's probably people that are better at writing a Roy Orbison song. Probably Roy Orbison. So if you are trying to sing a song like Roy Orbison and make, and pull that one off, it doesn't work. So I want to hear a song that sounds like you, and it's your true voice and your true experience. And that's really what the process of all this is about, is honing all that away and bracketing all that stuff out, all the learning we've done, which is absolutely valuable, that we need to hone our skills and get better at songwriting. But after a while, we just like, oh my gosh. I remember when I used to write poetry, I'd read so much Allen Ginsberg and listened to so much Allen Ginsberg, I would actually hear his voice. And so I had to really work on that a long time. Same with Bob Dylan. Whenever I'd write a song, it would sound like the Bob Dylan or the Beatles. And I just had to just keep working through it and get back to finding my own voice. And so just keep rewriting until it sounds like you. Is that something that I would actually say? You can ask yourself that at the end of every line or every stanza. Is that really how I would phrase that in my day-to-day way of speaking? I don't know. It's worth a go to hear your own voice and ask yourself that question. All right, I want to end with one exercise that I recommend you do. It's called emotional transformation. And it's taking a really intense emotional state that you have felt, but then just describing it with concrete imagery. Just things, so no idea, but in things. You can't talk about how you're feeling. You can't use any abstractions to talk about how messed up the situation was or how hurtful the situation was. Only objects and things. And the masters of doing this in my book, are the Objectivist poets. There's great anthologies of the Objectivist poets, but I just recommend you read just a couple of their poems and you can get what they're doing. They're not interjecting any of these concepts or qualifications or summations or overarching grand narratives on things. They're just giving the bare facts. For example, the devastation of war. I mean, you look at what's going on in Ukraine or what's happening in Gaza, and it's very easy to interject, like to moralize about it, to think about it in a bigger picture, about the policies of different governments, but just to think about the actual experience of the devastation. What would that be like to just describe that in objective terms? Well, there's this poem by Charles Reznikoff called After the War, and it was written in the 1930s. So this is after World War I, and he is describing the devastation. So I'll just read a little bit of it. And you'll see that everything is just a description of what you would see. You could also use any of the other senses. That's totally fine, as long as they're actual things you're describing. There's no moralizing. There's no saying, oh, what a horrible scene, what devastation, what carnage, or what sadness just was draped over the scene. There's none of any of that. It's just giving you just the facts. So here goes. Among the heaps of brick and plaster lies a girder, still itself among the rubbish, the frieze of a broken building, a few columns from a burned-out church, the twisted rail of a streetcar track. I saw a boy pick up a small wheel and roll it along the street. So all you're getting there is just concrete details, sensory information, and so that the reader can interject their own thoughts and emotions on it. And it's just human nature to do that. Eisenstein figured this out with his language of the cinema. If you want to show somebody hungry, you don't tell people like, oh, this person's hungry. You show a person's face, then you show a bowl of food, then you go back to showing the person's face. So this kind of objectivist approach to presenting the world. I'm going to present you with the sensory details, and I'm going to let you and your emotional state or whatever your emotional baggage you're bringing to it and your concepts of the world fill in the rest. And that's incredibly engaging for listeners. If you spoon feed people too much what they're supposed to think, what they're supposed to feel, it's just going to get old. You know, it makes them be lazy, first of all, but oftentimes it's just not gratifying or engaging. So one exercise I have my students do in poetry classes is they have to identify abstractions. Remember, an abstraction is something that is a concept in our mind. It doesn't actually exist in the real world, like fear or hope or love. Anything that is just a human concept that a cat wouldn't have any idea what the hell you're talking about if you said love. Animals, as far as we know, who knows what the actual truth is, experience the world through objects and through the senses. And they don't have a conceptual framework that's like ours, where we abstract things out and build these kind of crazy webs of abstractions and concepts to make the world make sense to us. So the exercise is you just find any abstract noun, especially if you're revising your lyrics, find these abstract nouns and replace them with a concrete thing. So what would be a concrete noun that would describe love? Well, an obvious one, maybe it's cliche, is two hands holding. Okay? A mother embracing her child. These are concrete things. What about hope? I don't know, a man holding a lottery ticket. So that's a really powerful exercise. I recommend you do it. And it will make your writing much better. I'm a real big fan of the objectivist approach to writing, and I really think it makes writing much, much stronger. Oftentimes we rely lazily too much on abstractions and just like with a wink, wink, you know what I mean when I say love. Well, yes and no, but why would I care about, you know what I mean, wink, wink. I already know the general knowledge of things. I already know all the cliches. I already know the commonplace status quo of thinking about things. What I want to know is what's your experience of love and what you're actually really going through right now, as opposed to just you turning it into some kind of Hallmark card. All right, well, this is very, very powerful work, and I hope you're finding some of these exercises and at least these talks about this somewhat useful for approaching your songwriting lyrics and being vulnerable. And I hope that I don't hope this ever happens to you. I hope you're never heartbroken or disappointed or upset ever again. But the silver lining is that if you happen to be, and you are in this mode of songwriting and being a creative person, that you can have a moment where you're like, man, I feel like shit right now, and this is really awful. I'm going to use it. I'm going to do some writing. And it's going to make you feel good just to get it off your chest. And who knows, you might get an amazing song from it. If you look at some of the best songs ever written, they were written in extreme states of intense emotions. And we can use those for our benefit and for everyone else's benefit. So best of luck with that, making the world a better place through your songwriting process and helping to heal the world through healing yourself and making a connection with other human beings. I wish you all the best of luck with that. Take care.